There's a problem that existed 6,000 years ago. Like the ancient texts, like the Vedas, they talk about the soma, right? Soma is this drug, which
Really?
now we think that they called it like the nectar of the gods. Now we think it's closely related to something like, magic mushrooms or marijuana. So even at that level, even at the most ancient of cultures where they didn't have all the problems that we had, all the distractions and all the anxieties and neuroses, even they were looking for something, and they ended up with the nectar of the gods being a drug.
That's the other thing that people don't realize, and I think it's so interesting, is how people act around money. People are so much more genuine when money isn't involved. You do something like get everyone together on a 200-foot yacht, and all of a sudden everyone's like trying to act very proper and not having fun anymore. And all like the whole fun is the fact that you're posting it on social media. Who knew? All right, welcome back to New Society Podcast. Society's fucked, but we have some ideas on what we can do about it.
Yep.
Just so you know, we're just starting out, but we never do any of this for the money. So if we do start making money on this, that's all going to charity. So we always start this off with a question. And, if you guys have any topic ideas that you want us to touch on or any questions that you have, put it in the comments. We'll be taking a look. I was looking, Chase, at some of the questions that you get.
Yeah.
And it seems like so many people are just miserable. And I know they are. I mean, it's like statistics. But why do you think so many people are absolutely miserable nowadays?
Yeah, I think a large part of it is that we, as a society, we're just moving towards just looking for more and more things externally to make us happy. And it's not new. It's either, you're looking for the next thing that you're going to achieve, the thing you're going to get, or you decide you're just going to drink or take drugs, right? And there's a problem that existed, since 6,000 years ago, right? You have like the ancient texts, like the Vedas, they talk about the soma, right? Soma is this drug, which now we think that it's they called it like the nectar of the gods, right? So now we think it's closely related potentially to something like, magic mushrooms or marijuana. So even at that level, even at the most ancient of cultures where they didn't have all the problems that we had, all the distractions and all the anxieties and neuroses, even they were looking for something, and they ended up with the nectar of the gods being a drug.
I wonder if they had alcohol back then. I wonder if that was...
Who knows? I've been reading some of this stuff, like all the ancient, like the Mahabharata. I think I mentioned to you before, they're talking about nuclear weapons existing back then, which, we don't have to cover that now. But the question was about the unhappiness. The general unhappiness comes from that searching and not really knowing where to search, right? And also ultimately not realizing that maybe searching itself is the problem, which is how I started my book. It's maybe you're just, maybe you shouldn't be searching. Maybe the happiness is just right where you are, which is what all the ancient philosophies and all the ancient texts talk about, because it has to come from within yourself. If you can make yourself unhappy, you can make yourself happy.
Yeah. But right? It's like some people are searching for, like, they don't realize that they're searching for happiness because they're just looking for something, even if it's just like food. Like everyone's just constantly reaching, like your phone or sex, drugs, success, money, whatever. So there's those people. But I think it's even worse, the people who are specifically looking for happiness. And that's one of the things, like, I know in the book you were saying, like, even the search to be happy has to be dropped, because it's just that looking is being in tension.
Right.
Oh, the intention is...
The intention?
Yeah. Your intention to be happy is making you in a state of tension. But it's definitely, they're like, if you are looking, I mean, I know for myself, but from when I was a little kid, I was unhappy. Like, I didn't want to go to school, and I'd be kind of depressed, and I'd fake headaches just to not go, and just, stay at home feeling depressed. And that was like at 7. Then by the time I was 14, it was like full blown massive depression. And, it's not like your parents know what to do. They took me to a therapist who gave me Cymbalta, Prozac, Concerta.
At what age?
Lexapro. That was by the time I was 16. So we had 2 solid years of massive depression. And then by the time, and even when I was 14, I started reading books. I was reading The 4 Agreements, which, great book, but there's nothing really solid. There's not a lot of like actionable advice. It just kind of gets you to see there's something else, there's smoke and mirrors type of thing. That was one of the 4 agreements. It's kind of like be impeccable with your word, things like that, but not really something that a 14-year-old can like put into action. And even with meditation, my mom was like pretty into that stuff, and she would say, oh, you need to meditate. And then I remember like my first time trying to do it, I was like, okay, like just be here right now. Like don't think. Like it actually got to a point where it turned into full-blown anxiety, because I was just now I'm aware of everything. Now I'm aware of my heart beating and all of this. And it was so horrifying, like to the point where I could not leave the house. Like I would have an absolute panic attack. And it took 15 years until I was, 30 to, are you saying wow? Because I'm so old.
Wow, yeah. Well, I was saying wow because it took you a while.
It took, it took 15 years to finally like read some really obscure stuff to truly understand meditation and to absolutely get rid of anxiety and like actually learn what happiness is. And it wasn't actually until I wasn't working anymore and money was abundant that I became the most unhappy. And then I had to really dedicate everything to meditation and trying to find how to be happy. So who has the time? Like I wasn't working for a year and dedicating every single day, all day, every day to understanding happiness and how to achieve that until it finally happened. And that was even like with removing myself completely from society, because, as we know, society is always the problem. But yeah, to me, I feel like it's just a lack of availability of actionable advice and society doing everything to turn you in the wrong direction.
I agree. I think it's a lot of advice that takes you nowhere, like you were saying, and I'm not saying that the 4 agreements and those books that you read are
and
bad.
Now, like, even to look back at some of it, it's like, oh my God, I get what they were talking about now, but it just wasn't actionable enough. And sometimes it's because they're being so poetic that you're just not ready to hear any of that. You're not ready to understand it.
I know. I mean, even if you read, Buddhist texts, right, from the Buddha's mouth written into text, that's not actionable either. It's the most, mundane, monotonous thing that he wrote because he wanted to be very, very precise. But you have to look, you have to look with a different type of perspective, right? And I think part of that perspective is an unbiased perspective, right? You when you get to that point, like if you're looking at everything, even things like meditation, like people will tell me, oh, I don't want to meditate. I don't have time to just sit there and just do nothing. I would rather be doing this thing that's challenging, right? Sitting down and doing nothing is the most challenging thing in the world. People that can sit down and just literally do nothing, that's a rare thing. That's a rare quality to have. To sit down and then also not be able to have your mind racing and thinking and, having that itch to distract yourself, that's a very hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing that gets you past those blocks, that clears your mind, where you can then, read those things, and go back and read certain things and see the poetry in it, like you were saying, right?
Because then you can find, like, people really don't understand how absolutely high out of your mind you can feel from meditation. Like, they have no idea. So then you read that and you're like, oh yeah, because this guy sounded like he was on drugs, and like he was, but it's like your body produces that, but we're just not in a state. We're always in like a fight or flight state. So I'd say 99.9% of the population is experiencing their entire life without experiencing that bliss. I know it for a fact. There's no way. There's no way, because it's an insane feeling.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. I mean, we were watching that documentary on mushrooms, psilocybin. How do you say it?
Psilocybin? You mean psilocybin?
Psilocybin, yeah.
I like psilocybin better.
I'm not a chemistry person, but magic mushrooms.
Yeah.
And, an overwhelming amount of those people were saying, this is happiness and this is bliss like I've never felt before. I didn't think I could be this happy. Even the guy that went to Mexico and brought it back to America said the same thing. It's like, I've never experienced happiness like this. And I understand, because there's all these blockages, and as soon as you start growing up, you have all the pressure to do things from your parents, from society, from your teachers telling you, like, you need to do this, you need to be this person. You're never able to really take a moment and just actually find out what makes you happy even.
Yeah. By the time you even gain consciousness, like I see like these TikToks and it's like the moment you gained consciousness, and it'll be like they're sitting there and they're in like a kindergarten class, and all of a sudden you just start hearing like things around you and you're like, who am I? Like, why am I? Like, what am I doing? And then you're like asking the teacher, and the teacher's like, all right, it's nap time. And like, but like I know what they're talking about. That just like all of a sudden realizing like, oh, I'm a human being. Like by the time you've gotten to that point, which is probably the only point at which you could start being a meditative person and understanding what awareness is, you're in the school system.
Yeah.
Like you're done.
You're indoctrinated. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you're rewarded, based on how well you do by society's standards, right? So you never know who you really are, because you have all these voices in your head from when you were in the school system, when you're growing up. You're rewarded based on how well you do with the principles of other people, right? And if you're in school, then it's your teachers enforcing those views, it's your parents enforcing those views, and it's whoever's in your family. And if you were like me and you were raised religious, then your principles are coming from someone that wrote this down 2023 years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
That's insane.
And how could you adopt those principles? How could that be you? How could that apply to you today? It's this dogma that's just flooded in your system. And so now everything that you do that might be moving you towards who you really are, there's this fight that's been built in you constantly. It took a long time for me to switch out of the mentality of organized religion. When I even though I was raised Buddhist and Christian, the Christian side was real strong. The Buddhist side is pretty just blasé. Very blasé. They don't really believe in anything. To get away from the beliefs of organized religion, it took a it was a tough thing. It's a tough thing to do.
It was a lot easier not being raised with religion.
Yeah,
so much easier, because it was actually kind of an interesting experience, because I just completely did everything based on intuition. Like I remember from when I was little, I would just come up with these theories based on like the moon and this and that. And I remember looking at the moon one night, and I was like, I had just learned about gravity, and I was like, wow, there's this invisible force that's keeping every planet in place. That must be the same type of thing as what God is. This invisible force that's just holding everything into place. And that was really a great feeling to have, like to come to that kind of conclusion, because it was nothing. Like I knew literally nothing about, I didn't know what Jesus is to God, to nothing, like zero of the stories, like nothing. I actually felt like I was going to burn up in flames whenever I walked into a church.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, right? I don't even think there's anything wrong with those teachings, but the way that and I keep saying organized religion, right? Because again, I don't think there's anything wrong with those teachings, and I feel like a lot of them are misinterpreted to help the case of organized religion. Because if you really look at,
say is like one of the biggest misinterpretations of some organized religion?
Well,
Because I know you've told me some things before that I was like, wow,
there's a few things. I mean, first of all, I think everyone knows that, Jesus wasn't born on Christmas, right? Although
not everyone knows, really.
apparently not, because we told,
Yeah.
But Jesus wasn't born on Christmas. It doesn't make sense. It's like historically inaccurate. And the Christmas Day is the worship of the pagan god of the sun. And they just kind of took it so that it would be easier for people to adopt into the religion.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it, right?
So creepy.
Jesus didn't die on a cross, right? Like if you really look at historically how they crucified people was, with their hands together, not to the side. It wasn't really feasible. So, the whole idea of the cross, and people wear crosses all the time, it's a little off. It's a little wrong. And the Pope actually sent a letter out to the cardinals. You can go look this up, where he admitted that there is probably a chance that he didn't die on the cross, but he told all the cardinals that, it's a little late. We
got a lot of fuckboys wearing cross earrings. We can't change it now.
This is the symbol now, right? But I think more so, besides like that kind of stuff, it's things like, the kingdom of God, right? Jesus said a lot of things that were very, it's almost like he went to the East and talked to the Buddha and came back and started, preaching.
And wasn't Buddha was first? Who was first?
Buddha was first. Buddha was 3,000 years before Christ.
What?
I think.
We're going to have to fact check.
I think it might be 1,000 years before Christ. Maybe 1,000 years. But definitely first.
Yeah.
But
even if it was 500, that's a long time.
It's a long time. And, the concepts though, Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you, right? Why do we not talk about that? Or why do they not talk about that?
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing, enlightenment, nirvana, that's within you. That's an Eastern teaching that you find the kingdom of God within you.
Yeah.
Whatever God is, existence, whatever that's inside you, right? And it's these little things that he would say that you could definitely see the similarities with Eastern philosophy, but we want to take that and make it extremely supernatural because it helps the case of keeping people indoctrinated into the religion.
Yeah, and I always felt like I didn't know much about religion, but I did know that it felt like it was keeping people in line, keeping people like doing, like acting a certain way and not being, I don't know, like it was keeping people like adjusted members of society. And I would think to myself when I was younger, like, wouldn't it seem reasonable that someone kind of did this on purpose to say like, oh, there's this angry being in the sky who will smite you if you're not listening to this? Because people must have been pretty primitive and crazy back then. And like, how else are you going to control people?
You're going to tame them? Not
that I'm saying it's all, a hoax or something. Like, I understand that there's so much historical significance to, I guess I'm talking about Christianity here because that was just what was around me when I was a kid. But it just seems like maybe it was distorted, like even, after the Buddha died and how a lot of that has been distorted.
Yeah, and I believe that Jesus was, enlightened. I think the story between, the Buddha and Jesus is pretty similar. They got enlightened around the same time. God claimed Jesus as his son when he got baptized around the same time, the same age as when the Buddha became enlightened. There's, and you gotta wonder why it's so similar, right? And I think, and another part about that is Jesus never wrote anything down, just like the Buddha never wrote anything down. And all these things, and what happens, the unfortunate part of that is that you are going to have misinterpretations. And I'm not just, shitting on Christianity right now, because again, I was raised in it. I'm not dismissing certain beliefs, but even with Buddhism, the way that it was handed down, through the years, if you read Buddha's words from like original translations to what a lot of people are doing now, two of my uncles are Buddhist monks. They've made Buddha into a deity, right? They don't believe in God, but they might as well, because they're worshiping Buddha the same way that Christianity worships Jesus. And I think that's also, and when my mom actually converted from Buddhism to Christianity, there was a whole riff in the family, right? Now, why would there be a problem with my mom converting to Christianity from being a Buddhist? There is no Buddhist teachings that should tell you to have animosity towards someone doing that. It should be the complete opposite. You genuinely shouldn't care, because at the core in Buddhism, it's an individual religion, right? It's an individual experience. And those are the Buddhist teachings. I'm going to give you my experience, have your own experience, not go spread the word and try to convert as many people into Buddhism as possible, right? So when my mom left and some of our family stopped talking to us, where does that come from? It's the same thing as, organized religion and Christianity. So down the years, this stuff gets warped. And that's why I believe the right way to, raise a kid is they should know these things, but to let them decide for themselves, because it is a personal relationship with whatever God you want to have, right? Whatever thing you want to believe, whether it's the universe or whether it's Jesus, whatever.
Or whether it's nothing.
Yeah, 100%.
It's so crazy. I think about it sometimes because it seems that it should be this natural state to be happy. So it seems like, why are so many people naturally unhappy? Why is it so easy to be unhappy? Why do we have to find out how to be happy? And from every book that I've read about any of this stuff, and from my own experience, it really comes down to that identification with your thoughts and becoming somewhat psychotic. Even if you're just a regular person, you're crazy in a sense, because people get so identified with that monkey brain, the part of your brain that they're just not even in control of, and associating that with themselves and never really having an opportunity to experience their own true self, which is a wordless phenomenon. That's what it feels like. It's just pure existence. And not a lot of people know what it feels like to just experience life without this chattering. Some people do. I actually was seeing some TikToks. I don't know if I told you about this, but there's apparently some people experience like thoughts like that and some people don't.
I've heard about this.
Yeah. Very strange. I wonder if those people are happier. But I also wonder if unhappiness started, or this form of unhappiness where we're just not in control of our emotions because we're not in control of our thoughts. I wonder if before language, people were just experiencing happiness. I actually wonder if language was almost this accidental disease that we spread, and it caused us to have a much larger region of the brain that's experiencing thought in the form of words that we then got so attached to. Like, what if we were supposed to be communicating telepathically?
I genuinely believe that we shouldn't be using our minds for anything other than to like do what we're doing right now, speaking, right? And I think that we've lost something along the way. These types of like fish, right? They're called grunions. When the tide is low, they come onto this beach to lay their eggs, and they know intrinsically when there's going to be high tide and low tide, right? They know better than we could predict, and they know exactly when to lay their eggs so that when the tide comes in, it washes the eggs back into the sea, right? And so the scientists were trying to figure out how they were doing this, and they figured out that it might be the moon, and they tried to simulate the moon rise and whatever in a controlled environment, and the fish wouldn't react.
Yeah.
They would only react when it was the actual moon, right? So they have a connection to it. And then like the birds migrating, we still don't know how they do that.
Yeah.
Our best guess, again, you could look this up. Our best guess is that they have an internal GPS system.
Wow.
Right. And when I say GPS system, I'm talking about
Map?
topography. What? Like they're understanding topography. Like almost like zoomed out, looking in like
but
satellite.
Kind of how like I don't remember what it's called, but bats have that.
Like echolocation, but it's not that. See, they haven't been able to figure it out. Which is crazy that they haven't been able to figure it out. We still don't understand how they know.
Yeah.
And how do they know when, and they know the paths and everything. And it, at the end of the day, it's this connection that they have with nature. Right. And the guy in that documentary, that mushroom documentary, said something very similar to that we have a connection with nature, and the mushrooms that they were given to the cancer patients were opening themselves up to nature. He
said it was like a portal.
Right.
Into.
And I think, what you said about language, like if there was no language, we'd be moving with moods, right? We'd be moving with shifts in energy. And I feel like we have a connection, to the earth and to things around us and to energy and quantum particles and all these things that we don't really understand. But it was our intelligence that caused that to go away. The more intelligent we became,
the less we had to rely on
things. And so our intuition died, our connection died. So I think, I do think that, if language didn't exist, I feel like people would you wouldn't have that constant chattering. You wouldn't have that unhappiness. You'd still have moods, right? You still have, feel certain ways. You'd have experience.
But not just being a victim to the psychosis going on in your head.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think, because we really identify so much with the thoughts, without, like, if you never know how to disidentify or unidentify, then you'll just be a victim of that your whole life. But like we were saying, with starting from when you're a kid, and even, when you're a kid, having all of religion, like thousands of years of religion of what someone wrote down thousands of years ago, it's so crazy that chatter that's going on is just like thousands of years of voices and opinions. It has nothing to do with you. And we just take it as, this is me. And really, it's just every voice of every experience that we've ever had since we were born. Yeah. Even like language, I like to think about it sometimes as like the language that you speak. What if it was a different language? Like, these thoughts are not true. It's just this specific language that you learned. But what if you were born, like, what if you never were taught any words? And sometimes it helps to think that in order to kind of understand what life experience would be without that chatter. But
yeah, I think getting to that point where you are not identifying with your thoughts is the key, right? And I know that affected you quite a bit when you just were able to zoom out and see the mind at work, right? And that's what meditation is ultimately. It's disidentifying with the thoughts and becoming an observer of your thoughts, and going. It's weird because you're saying you want to be the observer of your thoughts, but that's almost a technique to get in to oneness with your thoughts, right? Because ultimately, you're going to, like, your thoughts should just be you, right? If we're moving with emotion, if we're moving with moods, if we're moving with, just nature, then your thought is you. That should be the ultimate goal, right? Not even just let me be an observer all the time. When you're meditating, becoming an observer is a good thing. But, during your day to day, like, you can be one with the thoughts. You can, when you're talking, you can be with that thought, right? Yeah. And when you're speaking, you're not really thinking. Like, I'm speaking right now. I'm not thinking before I speak, right? So I think
that's an interesting phenomenon.
That you're just able to talk and not think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's you talking.
There's if you ever watch, when you watch TV, when you watch movies, you'll notice that a lot of the times the actors don't blink.
Really?
they don't blink because it takes away from the intensity, and you'll see. It's just take a note when you're watching TV shows, specifically like good ones or just like good actors. They don't blink.
Wow.
They'll do entire scenes and they're barely blinking. It's like once or twice they'll blink, and they do it on purpose, but it actually becomes very easy for them to not blink if they keep on talking.
Right.
If they keep on like engaging and acting, because it's almost like a stopping their thoughts at that point. They're not remembering their lines, they're just going.
Right.
And they're able to just keep, that laser focus. And I think what meditation does is it gets you closer to that point. Just become an observer when you're meditating, realize that these thoughts are just going, these thoughts aren't yours. And then you could have your own thoughts that you are a part of, right, during your day to day.
I think, it's like, it's strange because your mind, or I guess when I say your mind, I mean what the not real sounds that you're hearing in your head that you're identifying as voices. It can sometimes help you. It's like sometimes you'll be just, you're trying to meditate or something and your thoughts are going. And sometimes your own mind will remind you to be meditative and to be an observer. And it's strange because then it's almost like your mind helping you get out of itself. And I know something for myself that was like really eye-opening is it just occurred to me that if I can hear, because the whole observer thing I have not issues with, but I realized I was being an observer from inside my own mind. And it wasn't until I realized, wait a second, if I can hear the thought, that means I'm still operating from my mind, because it is my mind. It's a part of my brain that's interpreting this unreal speech, because it's not auditory. It's my brain making the noise and then my brain hearing it. So the whole time I was thinking I was observing my thoughts, I was just listening while in my own mind. So the second I understood that and thought, wait a second, I can't observe and hear at this, and I can't observe and understand at the same time. The place that I am needing to observe from, the really silent place, doesn't even understand thought, because it's only your mind that can interpret that unreal noise. So it just built this wall, this like total separation between what the mind is and what I am, which is just pure consciousness. And that was a really not a difficult place to get to, but that took a lot of time and a lot of meditation and a lot of trial and error. But even still with that, that's still not something I've read in all the like hundreds of books that I've read on all of this. And it might have been said in a way, but you can't know until you experience it.
Yeah. I think Buddha was trying to say that, right? Because his idea of observing your thoughts was also tied in with, you have to observe your thoughts, but you also can't touch them. You can't judge them one way or another, right? So you can't say, oh, I'm having a thought, let me stop thinking about it, or I'm having this thought, this is a bad thought, this is a good thought. Just you can't be involved at all. And I think that's maybe what he was trying to get to, kind of what you said, where if you are judging your thought and you're saying, oh, I'm having the thought and now I'm having
then that's still part of the mind.
It's still part of the mind. So but I think it's a good stepping stone.
You need to at least come to that point, and you need to practice that, because even getting there, you still get lost in it. You still just start. It's almost like you're falling back asleep. Like you'll go from like observing, and then you just start slipping back into this dream of what your mind is going on about. And then it's almost like you wake up again and you're like, oh yeah, like I have to stay alert. I have to be focused. And that's something that even then, thinking back on the things that I read, I was like, that's what they meant. Being awake, everyone's asleep.
Yeah.
And, in this culture now, being awake is being woke and making sure you're using the right pronouns for people. But it's so much more than that. And we're really not focused on that. There's so many distractions. No one is ever going to get to this point.
It's a crazy amount of distractions out there.
Yeah.
And that's, in my book, I called it an unconscious unhappiness, where we've gotten to the point where there's so much distraction that people are miserable and unhappy, and they don't even realize it, right? They don't even see it. Because as soon as the feeling comes, before they can even take note of it, you can just pop up your phone and you can start scrolling or whatever. But that unhappiness doesn't go away.
Yeah.
That sense of whatever doesn't go away just because you take a hit of dopamine. You do at some point have to start, really looking at what's going on.
That's the thing. You don't have to, because you can go get a drink and no one thinks that that's weird. Yeah. You could go out and get a drink every night and no one's going to think that's weird.
Yeah.
You can just order something on your phone and talk to somebody. Like, there's 100,000,000 ways to distract yourself. I mean, just binge a TV show.
Yeah.
There's no real way, unless you decide you're absolutely fed up and you need to, and then you have to decide that you're going to turn to the exact right place, because you could decide that you're fed up and then turn to someone that's very prevalent in the self-help industry, and they are likely going to lead you down the wrong path.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people in the self-help industry talk in the way, and I don't want to knock anybody for going through their own journey, but I can't imagine listening to someone that's just currently going through their journey.
Yeah.
And people do all the time, right? It's like, oh, I'm depressed and this is what I'm going to do, or this is what
worked for me yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, you got to take that with a grain of salt. Like, if you're still at that stage, then it obviously didn't work too well. There's ways to get rid of this problem permanently.
Yeah.
There's ways to get rid of these problems permanently. And it sucks because the help out there is so bad, and people are just trying to make a dime off of everything.
Yes, that is the other huge problem.
And
every single one of them.
Yeah.
You're probably the only one not trying to make money off of this.
I think I am.
I think you are. Who is there?
I don't know. And when Caleb's video with the apartment tour came out, and everyone was like, "Oh, how are you? How are you paying $12,000 a month in rent and your spiritual teacher, like,
because one has
wrong,
nothing
whatever."
to do with the other.
Other people were calling me like I was trying to hustle people, and I was thinking, like, what am I selling?
Yeah.
My book is on Amazon for literally the lowest price that I could choose, right? For it to be printed through Amazon, like, actually, and it's like $1.99 on Kindle or something like that. So it's like, I'm not getting, it's not helping my bank account at all here. So,
it's actually causing you a lot of time and energy.
Yeah.
Without.
And I think a lot of the self-help people, they, to make money, you can't really give the proper advice.
Yes, because you have to meet people where they are, and you have to be marketable. Yeah,
you have to be marketable. And what the marketing that works is, as sad as it is, it's these empty words. It's like, you need to, post on social media these motivational quotes for the day, and like, oh, look at this video. It's gonna make you feel good today, make you feel like, look at these wholesome moments and whatever.
Yeah.
And that's all just dopamine spikes. You're just feeding your base just dopamine spikes. It's not actionable stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like, as much as I don't like the way that Sadhguru does, speaks sometimes, I think he might be the only one that's actually giving advice that hits you to your core a little bit, of, hey, take some perspective on what you're doing, because everything else is just so empty.
Yeah. It's
so empty. You read any self-help book and you just get the motivation for a little bit. And as soon as you're done, you're almost like living through the motivation of reading the self-help book, and then you're done, and then it's like, okay, it's like nothing happens. Get another one.
I think what the problem is, like you brought up Sadhguru, I think some of these other people are just too relatable Maybe someone, not Jay Shetty, I wouldn't say he's that relatable, but he is putting out digestible, marketable content. But then you have someone like Sadhguru who's, it almost seems like, oh, okay, well, this older Indian man, sure, he has the answers, but that's him. Like, I'm a young person in America. What am I going to, like, there's no way I'm going to get to that level. It's not relatable. You don't have people who are really in it, like really in society and really in the culture saying, hey, I did it. I know what it's like to be miserable, but I'm happy now, and I know how to be in the marketplace and be happy.
Yeah, it's a good thing that you brought up the marketplace, because that's the key, right? You have these people that are also pitching these, go away to, fucking Costa Rica and do ayahuasca and, be in this isolated experience. And of course, it's easy to go to one of those things and feel like something's happening, right? They spend a lot of money on this. It's like $5,000 per person to go to one of these places for like 3 days to, do meditation classes and yoga classes or whatever. Nothing's wrong with meditation classes. Nothing's wrong with yoga classes. But when you put yourself in that situation, when you put yourself in that mode, and then you come back home, how does that translate? Right? Because if you build up that environment, it's like, I say, like going into a monastery or something, it's running away from real life. You need to figure out what you're doing right now. You need to figure out what you're doing while you're going to work, while you're in the city, while you're, in social situations and things like that. How do you be meditative? How do you apply the aspects of Eastern philosophy into your life?
While you're on the subway.
While you're on a subway,
yeah,
and not, in the jungles of Costa Rica, because, it's not hard to feel divine. It's not hard to feel enlightened in a place like that, in an environment like that. And I feel like they bank off of this ideology. They know that if they take a bunch of people that are unhappy and put them in a remote location,
that they're going to feel great.
That they're going to feel great.
Associate.
They're going to associate. They're going to start contributing more money into it, and they get richer. And that's, even if they start off meaning well, it devolves into that because they need to keep it up at this point.
Yeah.
Right now, you've gotten to this point, you have to keep it up, and you know what sells. People need to, I don't know, it sucks. That's why self-love is fucked, because what sells is what's not working. What sells
Otherwise,
is the easy solution. Yeah. It's like, here, I'll teach you how to hustle. I'll teach you how to do this.
Yeah, like the subtle art not giving a fuck.
Right. That's the kind of stuff. That everyone looks like, oh, maybe this is the golden, ticket here that's going to get me there quick. It doesn't. Not one person in my entire life has come up to me and said that the subtle art of not giving a fuck has made them somehow a better person.
Yeah.
Or any of those books. Even, I talk about like How to Win Friends and Influence People. That whole book is based on just how to boost people's ego so they like you more. It's just manipulation tactics of like, hey, let me boost this guy's ego so he likes me more. Let me talk as little as possible and get out of them as much as possible. Make them talk a lot because people like hearing each other, themselves talk, and they'll like me more for it.
Yeah.
And that's the entire book. And before Harry Potter came out, it was like the most sold book next to the Bible.
Really?
It's like real talk.
Well, Harry Potter's better.
I agree. Yeah. I would recommend read Harry Potter over that book.
That's a much more spiritual
You probably
experience.
get way more insights on good versus evil and all that stuff.
Yeah, just be like Harry Potter.
Be like Harry Potter.
You'll be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting you brought up ego, because I think that's another huge issue with society, because we're supposed to be, like, if you want to be happy, detaching from ego. And even like, when I had heard that, I didn't really understand, because in my mind, I'm like, oh, ego means like you're egotistical. So it's not even just about how great you feel about yourself. It's just the idea of yourself and what yourself is. Like, for one, the identification with thought and everything, but also this whole sense of separation that people have between one another. Like, we're not living in a society where people feel one with each other. We're not seeing the reality of the situation, that we're all human beings. There's so much, especially, you know, in New York City, everyone is so just get away from me as much as possible. Like, don't make eye contact. And then with social media, it's like, this is me. This is who I am. Look at me. Like, we just have this huge built up sense of who we are. You know, it's been starting since MySpace. Like, you know, we're using like HTML codes to be like, this is me. Like, this is who I am. You know, it's another thing just massively adding to the problem. And unless we start recognizing that and moving towards a society that's more cohesive and seeing the sameness in each other, then we're just going to keep attaching heavily to that ego. And not that we have to like stop being expressive, but it's just recognizing you're nobody. Like, you don't matter. Not that, you know, but it's just everyone is made of the same stuff. You know, we're not so different.
Everyone is made of the same stuff. Mm-hmm. Everyone's actually made of stardust.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
I did. It's insane.
Like 100%.
Yeah.
Stardust.
But we don't walk around like that. We don't walk around like we're stardust. We walk around like we're fucking assholes.
Yeah. We're made of the same elements in the entire universe. And we walk around like we're just little specks of dust in the universe. So we walk around with this
huge ego.
And you know, it doesn't mean that you don't, like you were saying, it doesn't mean that you don't be expressive. It doesn't mean that you close off. It's just stop thinking of yourself as so grand.
Yeah.
And it will make you feel better.
We are so grand because we're a piece of something that is so grand.
Exactly.
But it's like, you are not so separate and you're not better than anybody else. That's another thing. We always are just, you know, I'm seeing girls like basically crying on social media because they're not as popular as like whatever her name is. Who? The blonde girl with the blue eyes, Alex Earl or something like that. That girl that just randomly got popular. Right. But yeah, these girls are so miserable because they're not like Instagram famous or something. And they don't even know why they want that. They just know that they want it and they need it and they're not going to be happy until they do it. Like, so many of them. And like, their videos will actually blow up because of the fact that they're saying, I can't be happy until I do this. So like, please blow up my video. And it's sad. And you know, what's even worse is that...
Hold on, there's people begging for fame on TikTok? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And they're like, that one video will blow up and I'll look at their page to see what's happening. And then that's the only video. And then I'm like, oh, this girl is screwed because she just got the biggest dopamine hit. Her threshold is through the roof of what feeling good is right now and where to get feeling good from. And now she's not going to get it again. I can't imagine the depression that's going to come along with that now. It's terrible. And you have kids being raised on this. We were lucky enough to at least be raised before cell phones.
Yeah.
But now you have kids. I was shopping and I saw this little girl just like storying, like, you know, like she's like going to lunch and I'm like, oh, this is, can you imagine being like 7?
I can't imagine.
And little kids like talking to each other because they're going to emulate what they see these other girls doing. They're going to start acting like that and it's going to be embedded into them.
Yeah.
I really can't imagine.
And the sad part about this is, you know, they did a study, I don't know, a survey, whatever it was, of like high school students and, you know, asking them what they wanted to be. And the top answer was YouTuber.
Oh my God.
And the second answer was influencer. And the sad part about that is there's not that many of those jobs to go around.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to have multiple, you know, thousands of famous, you know, TikTokers and YouTubers. Yeah. It's just not going to happen for most of them. And they're setting that as their ultimate goal. And I don't know what's going to I really don't know what's going to happen to this generation when they realize that they can't be that thing.
Yeah.
Right? They can't get to that point. And it's a sad thing. And I don't know, I feel like it's at the precipice of this level where maybe finally we're going to start as a society starting to reverse and starting to go more, inner, more into spirituality, more into, finding that happiness, inside and not externally.
Yeah.
Because it's just fucked.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the hopes. That's one of the hopes of podcasts like these that will get us all to maybe come together as a society and make a decision that we're not gonna keep adding to this. Like, at least have some awareness of it. Stop creating even a younger generation than already the young generation that is miserable and fame hungry and money hungry and drinking themselves to death.
Yeah,
honestly.
and that's another thing about the money hungry. It's that's just another piece of the cake. It's the fame and the money, and for young men specifically, it's just the money. Like, I don't think a lot of them are thinking, oh, let me get the fame, but what's pushed in their face is the idea of you need to become a millionaire, you need to make your mark in the world, right? You need to start hustling and doing all this stuff. And that also is going to lead them down a very bad path. It's, that's the kind of stuff is not for everybody.
Yeah.
Creativity isn't appreciated anymore, really. Artistry isn't appreciated anymore. And, maybe, I don't know where that's going to go with the whole AI thing, because that's insane. That stuff is insane. Some of the stuff that's producing is better than I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Right? We have to, they have to just really stop, ease up on this like hustle culture and, working your ass off, like nonstop, don't be lazy, all this stuff, to shift into, you should be moving forward, but you should also live your life.
Yeah.
You also got to be happy. You have people, like I was saying on the last episode, people saying like, if you don't have a Lambo in your 20s, you need to really look at your life, reevaluate who you are. That's a terrible thing. And I say that as someone that grew up on welfare, right? I made all my money by myself. And even me looking at that from my perspective now, that's a terrible thing to say. That's a terrible way to look at growth. It's a terrible way to look at success. It's a terrible way to look at business. These arbitrary things. What was it? I think it was like 21 Savage who was like, he's not wearing chains anymore because he he's been hanging around like millionaires and whatnot, and they don't have any chains. And Kanye West actually was on before all this craziness. He was on Drink Champs, and he said the first time he met Elon Musk said, "Oh, only millionaires wear chains." Things like that. I feel like that kind of rhetoric is better as like egotistical as that sounds.
It's almost like you have
better.
to get to that level of wealth to understand that wealth is not.
You don't need this stuff. I mean, we have friends that are at, almost there, and their ideas about, like fancy watches and fancy cars and all this, it's so crazy. Like, what's up with this? And it's not. Maybe the cars are different because they actually like cars, but all this other stuff is just showing off. They just want to show off.
Yeah.
They're trying to spend to show off because that's all they know.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just
like, what if they were just happy?
What if you were just happy?
Like, I wouldn't like them less. I'd like them more because I'd feel like I could actually spend time with them in a situation that they don't have to show off how much money that they have. Like, I don't need you to get a 120-foot yacht to hang out with you. Yeah. I actually had a much better time on a smaller boat.
We had a better time on the 65. Yeah. Which this sounds
because you're closer together.
This sounds very
because everyone acts. That's the other thing that people don't realize, and I think it's so interesting, is how people act around money. People don't, I think, know that this is going to happen, that you know, people are so much more genuine when money isn't involved. And then,
Oh, for sure.
you know, you do something like get everyone together on a, you know, 200-foot yacht. And all of a sudden everyone's like trying to act very proper and not having fun anymore. And all like the whole fun is the fact that you're posting it on social media. Who knew? Who knew that, you know, triple the size of the yacht and you are going to have a really bad time?
Yeah. It wasn't fun. And yeah, the boat was beautiful, but it's just not
It's not what causes fun. It's not what causes happiness.
Yeah, I feel like and the people that are, you know, at the top, I mean, we're talking about very specific people here, but I think the people that are at the top aren't looking at it that way. You know, they're setting up situations for themselves to have fun, but they're not doing it just based on, oh, look how much money I have, let me floss in front of all my friends. And, you know, it's the same rhetoric as I hear guys say this all the time. It's like, oh, you know, going to Carbone, like I got the reservation at blah, blah, blah. Like, do you even fucking like this food?
Expensive restaurants suck.
We've been to all of them.
Yeah, they're awful.
They suck.
The only good restaurants are vegan restaurants that are small.
Well, even before, you know, we were fully vegan, it was like...
Yeah, even still, all the restaurants. Malibu and, what is it? Nobu Malibu. Well,
yeah.
I don't know what they're talking about.
It's terrible. I don't know what they were talking about.
The truffle was flavorless.
Yeah.
I've had 12-euro pasta in Italy that, well, I guess, yeah, and then...
Well, you had the fresh truffles in Italy, and then you came to Nobu Malibu and paid, like, twice more for...
Twice?
Yeah, 2 times more?
You think it was only twice as much?
Maybe.
It's definitely 12 euros. What was it? $30? 12 euros for a big plate of truffle pasta.
That's true. That's true.
No way.
Yeah, it was a lot more for something that tasted like nothing.
Like dirt.
Like dirt. Yeah. I mean, it's...
But people get this stuff in their heads. It's they like brainwash themselves into thinking that these things are good. It's not good. It doesn't taste good.
Good. It's
not even a big portion.
I mean, if you go to Nobu Malibu and you go to another sushi restaurant, I get the fuck out of here. Don't tell me you taste the fucking difference. Don't tell me you taste the difference. I love food. Don't tell me you taste the difference. And, you know, we've been to but it's almost it's like, oh, I'm going to post it on my Carbone. Yeah. Because I know that these types of people
will think that
will think that it's cool. Yeah. You can't really get reservations there or whatever.
What does it say about me? But this is the whole thing. This is the issue with society that needs to change. What is cool needs to change. Because right now, what is cool is how many likes do you get? How much money do you have? How much designer shit are you wearing? How many followers do you have? Are you funny? But if you're funny and people aren't following you, then that's really not cool. Funny? Then are you actually funny?
Yeah.
But that needs to change. Like, you know, what was it like in the 70s? Like, what was cool was being like a chill person. Like, ooh, you know, like a cool guy. Like, imagine life was just like that.
I wouldn't even say 70s. Even the
I'm
90s,
not saying that that's
like that.
The 90s. Yeah.
So you were chill.
And thank God. Yeah. I grew up in the 90s.
I know. Even, the 90s were like that. I would say even going into the 2000s, it was kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what it was. Like, we had nothing of the sort. Like, being cool in the 90s and the 2000s was like, you just didn't give a fuck.
You just didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I hope that it goes back to that.
But I don't hope it goes back to that, because then it's just going to go right back where what happened now. Because now, you just care too much. There's always like this rubber band effect that happens. It's like the 50s was very conservative. So the 60s was very, you know, free hippie. And then the 70s was all about free love. So then the 80s was all about like money, money, money. And then the 90s went back. So it's just this constant back and forth. But if what was cool was your ability to be happy and present and to not drink. Like, I saw this girl posted, I guess maybe because it's dry January, so many people are talking about not drinking, and it is important, I think, in a spiritual or like a emotional development to not drink, because you never learn how to have fun if you're not drinking, because you constantly just have this drug telling you that this is what you need to enjoy yourself. But this girl was saying, I feel like alcohol is becoming the new cigarettes. And I'm like, that's amazing. I do hope that happens. Although it seems like it's being replaced with 2C.
Becoming more cigarettes.
Because cigarettes aren't cool anymore.
So alcohol is going away.
And except for like France, like, you know, in America, when someone smokes cigarettes, it's kind of like,
what are you
bro,
doing?
you smoke? Like, are you trying to die? Like, you know you're going to die, right?
I mean, you know, when you're drinking alcohol, you should know that you're killing yourself.
But we like don't, it's so insane. Like it's.
Yeah, it's become very, very much part of our culture. And I think a big part of, you know, alcohol for me, and a big part of the reason that I stopped drinking is you don't want your personality to be tied to alcohol, right? You don't want, especially if you're trying to move forward in life.
Yeah.
If you're drinking constantly, if you're drinking all the time when you go out, when you're socializing, you don't remember the way that you are when you're drunk, when you're not drunk. Your drinking personality is way different from your personality in general. Yeah. And none of the social aspects of that and none of the openness when you're drinking actually transfers over because you literally don't remember. So you don't get the reference experience. I'm not saying blackout drunk. I'm talking about general drunk. You just don't remember.
Yeah.
Because you're not
fully present.
You're not present at all. Like your mind is just not that. I mean, your mind is not. You're just not there.
But you're also not the same person.
Yeah.
And you're not experiencing what it's like. Because when I stopped drinking, I looked into, okay, what is it that drinking was doing for me? Because I realized it wasn't making me feel good. It wasn't making me happy. It kind of just felt like it's just making me dependent. Like I always just keep needing more and more. But a lot of what it is just lowering your inhibition through GABA, which is basically just like a feel good. So you're never learning. Like that's what it was for me. It was just that I didn't like that I had the feeling that if I was about to get together with someone, even if it's a close friend, that I just immediately, I'm like, well, I need something to blur the lines here. Like, well, I'm not going to raw dog it with this interaction. Like, I need to lubricate this.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, who am I? This is so out of alignment with if I'm a relaxed, happy person and present, what would I need alcohol to change my personality to be with this person?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And I think, you know, a large part of it is that changing the personality. If you want to be a different person around your friends, if you want to be, you know, more social or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve by taking in alcohol, you better do that when you're not drinking.
Yeah. Because
that does not stick. If you know, get to a point when you're drinking and you're more social and that is what you're looking for, is that, you know, lack of inhibition, you're going to get to a point where you're in a situation where you need to be social. Yeah. Right? When you need to have that lack of inhibition and you're not going to be able to actually summon that without going and getting a drink. You know, if you get into, you know, let's say you become social, like networking, even just like a networking event, you're drinking, right? And you're networking really well with people, right? Because you're drunk and you're able to socialize. That doesn't actually retain in your mind. So if you ever get into a situation where you have to put yourself out there for a job, for, you know, to, you know, further your career, just some random chance thing that happens, a coincidental thing that happens, and you don't have time to run over there, grab, you know, chug a few shots and come back, who are you? Can you handle yourself in that situation?
But even that, like if say you're at a networking event and you want to whatever, you better hope everybody else is drinking because the sober people notice.
Oh man.
It is insane.
Yeah, I challenge anyone to, you know, if they go out to a bar or something, just
be sober
one
the whole time.
one time just be sober
and realize like this is who I'm being.
Be sober for like at least for like the first hour that you get there.
No, I'd say 2 hours, because the first hour, it's so insane. You see the levels. It's the first hour, everyone is very reserved. Yeah. Everyone's kind of like to themselves. You start to see at the same time when everyone's alcohol kicks in.
Oh man.
And they're just all over the place, yelling, singing. And it's like almost the music is louder to them than to you, because it's like, I hear how badly you're singing. I don't know what it sounds like to you in your head, but it sounds real bad from over here. And again,
it's not bad that they're singing. It's just this. It's not bad that they're singing.
Yeah, no, it's great, be happy, but I know it's so sloppy.
There's a sloppiness, and that's something that you really got to think, like, do you want to be that guy? Mm-hmm. Because you are that guy.
You are that guy.
You're definitely that guy. Don't you shouldn't think like, oh, I don't get this drunk.
You do.
But you do.
Because even if, I think it's very noticeable, I think any female or, even male, whatever, will say, if you're not drinking, and even if your significant other, like someone that you know very well, has one drink, you notice. You absolutely notice. There's these subtleties that you just, and it's so uncomfortable. You're just like, who is this person? Like, you're not being yourself. You're not present here. You're not with me. And that's one of the main things I was realizing. I would meditate, and then I would have a drink to go out, because that's what you do. And all of a sudden my meditativeness is almost gone. And I'm noticing that I'm just not fully, it's almost like there's this wall between me and reality, making everything blurry, not, visually blurry, but you're just not really there. And it's, you really need to experience life without alcohol in order to truly work on yourself.
Yeah. And to, once again, truly understand who you are, mm-hmm. Who you are without having to take those breaks. Yeah. And being yourself. Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's another thing. I really think society is going to move towards different substances that are healthier. Like mushrooms, like microdosing. I do find microdosing interesting when you go out, but it really only does anything nice if you're very meditative, because then it just kind of boosts that meditativeness. But if you're in an anxious state, it'll boost that anxious state. So it really, something like mushrooms encourages you to be more meditative, because you'll need to be in order for it to have a positive effect. Yeah. So I hope society goes more in that direction. And I'm already noticing so many places have like mocktails. Like almost any like decent place you go to has a mocktail menu, because they're realizing a lot of people are choosing not to drink anymore. And I think that's great. But I just hope it becomes, a lot more normal not to need alcohol to be like our whole society is like built on alcohol and caffeine, which we'll talk about another time. I'd like to talk about like dopamine and desire and caffeine and everything next time, because that's a whole other issue.
Yeah, and it's not, and the biggest thing about alcohol consumption is like, oh yeah, you only got one life to live. Why not drink? Yeah. But that's the point that we're trying to make is it's not about health. Mm-hmm. I mean, it helps. It helps with the health. Yeah. But it's more so being able to be happy without anything mm-hmm. external, including alcohol, mm-hmm. is a really, really good feeling. Mm-hmm. Imagine you're able to be happy all the time. Yeah. Right? Without needing anything, without mm-hmm. needing any escape. And that's what you want to aim for. That's what you want to try to get to. Mm-hmm. So take away, anything that is putting you in that mode. Mm-hmm. And that even goes into, relationships. It's like if you, be unconditional with love and unconditional with relationships, because even that is something that you're trying to get out of someone. You're trying to mm-hmm. get happiness out of something that's external to you, mm-hmm. just like you're trying to get happiness out of alcohol. Mm-hmm. Like those things can go away. Yeah. You're left at the end of the day. Like mm-hmm. you need to have that core just happiness. Mm-hmm. And if you did have that core happiness, and if you did have that core confidence, then you would never reach for alcohol mm-hmm. anyway.
And it wouldn't be that you would even need to be afraid of alcohol, because you could have a drink and be like, okay, but then you would just start to notice like, wow, I actually feel better when I'm not drinking.
Yeah. And it's something that you need to actually experience and come to, terms with yourself, not because someone told you either, because it doesn't work. If you any type of ideology, any type of value that you take from someone else never works ever. No one's stuck to something just because they heard someone say it and said, oh, I'm going to copy this. If you don't really take that in, if you don't really,
if it doesn't like resonate,
it's not going to happen. It's not going to work.
But let me cut us off here because we've been talking for quite a while now, but there's a lot I want to talk about next time because society's fucked, but I think we can do something about it. So leave comments, you guys, if there's anything that you want to talk about, any questions, anything like that, and we'll catch you next time.